Welcome to the fun and mentals of real estate. I'm your host today, Angela Dillmon with the Dillmon Group here at KW Chesterfield, where we are helping you build wealth,
live your dream lifestyle,
and leave legacies that matter. Josh Gulledge, our expert buyer's agent, is again joining us today, and Glenn has the day off. Oh my gosh, Glenn, 3 days in a row. Really? 3 weeks in a row? Unbelievable. Anyway, topic today. What's our question of the day?
Yeah, so do I always have inspection rights? Because we're talking about inspection.
We're going to talk about inspections today. We've been under contract on a house in our buyer series here, and it's time to have an inspection. I'm like, do you always have inspection privileges when you make an offer? So, every state is different, and even counties and areas like here in St. Louis is one way we do things. But say Springfield, Missouri, they do it completely different. So we have our own contracts here, the St. Louis Association of Realtor Contracts. In Springfield, they use the Missouri Association of Realtor Contracts. Mm-hmm. So, everybody does it a little different, and then state to state, it's very different. So do I always have inspection privileges, Josh, when I buy a house?
Not always, depending on how you write the contract. But again, the majority of buyers do want to have some kind of inspection of some sort.
So are they built into our contracts typically?
They are built into our contracts unless we remove them or use what we call a special sale contract and don't add a rider onto that.
Right. So you could make an offer, non-contingent on inspections, but we always try to have inspection privileges. They are built into our standard residential contracts here. How long do I have for an inspection here?
Yeah. So on our contract, it says 10 days unless stated differently.
All
but
right.
standard,
is that
standards,
10 days?
Yeah, standard
Work
practice
days?
that's 10 days from contract, business or weekends.
All right.
But again, standard of practice right now is because it's a very hot seller's market. The buyers are shortening their timeline, so anywhere between 5 and 7 days is what we're seeing most of the time.
Most of the time.
10 days is typically a little too long.
10 days a little long in this market, but that's the standard. So in this inspection period, I have this 10-day inspection privilege. What has to happen in those 10 days?
Yeah, so again, when I'm talking to a buyer, a lot of times they're surprised by that, like 7 days. Like, is that enough time?
Right.
I get that pretty much every time. And yes, that is absolutely doable with our inspectors. There's a lot of inspectors out there, which we'll talk about, but 7 days, they're used to what is standard. I mean, they're in the industry. They know that they have to put inspections out very quickly. If they have a 2-week I'm booked 14 days out. Well, guess what? They're not getting this inspection because we don't have 2 weeks.
Right. So we can get it done in that time. So if I do have inspection privileges, what are all the types of inspections I can have? Do I just call the guy out and he comes out and checks the house out? Or do I have all kinds of options?
Yeah, so as a buyer, you get to choose. You can do no inspections. Well, even if you have the rights, you can say, hey, Josh, I'm not worried about it. I don't want to do any inspections. I don't want to pay the money. You can have the buyer that wants to do it all. So again, you have a pool. You can have a pool inspection.
Yes.
A septic inspection.
Right.
Obviously, always a sewer inspection. They can actually camera and scope the sewer.
Camera and the sewer line is really a big one. So you have your whole house, and then you have what else? Radon.
Yeah, termites, chimneys.
Chimney inspections are add-ons, right? You could have a mold inspection. The whole house is where they crawl around everything. And we talked about occupancy last week. So basically, this is way more invasive of an inspection. But still, even though it's more invasive than occupancy, is it really completely invasive? So what is my expectations of a building inspector when I have him out? Is he like an expert in every field, in every system?
Yeah, they're definitely not experts in every field. Inspectors' experiences are huge. So there's no license for an inspector. They have a license. They can take if you have a higher end inspector, they take a class or course what's called ASHI certification, which just shows that they follow more of a guideline and procedures that inspectors should follow.
It is a higher standard of practice.
Yes.
They do have to pass a test to become American Society of Home Inspector approved, ASHI for short.
Yeah.
So they are higher level inspectors because basically anybody can hang out a shingle.
Again, I could
be
an
one
inspector
tomorrow.
today.
I'm just saying I could.
I could go out and inspect your house today, and
So what is an inspection exactly then?
Yeah, so I always tell people it's kind of like a rough draft on a paper if you were in school. Like it's just you submit it and say, hey, these are, and the teacher reviews it and says, hey, these are the changes that I would make.
Right. So
It's the same way. So you get an inspection back and it says, hey, I'm not sure, but the roof looks like it could need to be replaced. But again, they're not roofers. Or, hey, I see this crack in the wall. I don't like it. I would consult a foundation guy.
Right.
The furnace is acting a little funny. I would have a contractor come out and look at the furnace. And again, the list septic, every item. They
Right.
very rarely do they say this is broken and this is how you fix it. They
And the
definitely
ASHI
don't say
standards
that.
are don't tell me how to fix it. Tell me that this is a potential problem.
Have
This is ASHI standard.
Have somebody
Hey,
else
that crack looks like it could be a problem. It looks like it's been leaking. Have the waterproofer out, right?
Yeah.
This roof looks like it may have some hail and wind damage on it. Have the roofer out. So it's kind of like a point to a potential problem. That's really the expectation. And it is visual, right? I mean, they're not using an x-ray machine, right?
They're not. But again, when we talk about inspectors, one of the inspections that I love more than most is the good ones, they run infrared cameras nowadays. That checks for surging wires behind walls. And the big one is, and this is all happening after they're done with the inspection. Most inspectors, they flush the toilet 5 times. They run water in every tub and shower for 2 minutes or longer. They fill up the sink and drain it. And then when it's all done, they then scan the dishwasher, everything. They scan the house with an infrared camera, and it can find leaks that are physically impossible to know were there without that camera. We had a 2-story home, tub leaking real bad, but they never used the tub. The sellers don't. So the leak wasn't active enough to even put a stain on the ceiling. Infrared camera hit the ceiling, and he said, there's a bad leak up there. Like a lot of water, but it hadn't even soaked through yet. And then, sure enough, we found it, and it was a stream. It wasn't just a drip.
So that's a major system. So it's sort of like an insurance policy. It's like, hey, have it looked over. They're going to point to bring a professional out. Dishwasher's broken. Don't know exactly what's wrong with it. It's leaking. Figure out somebody who to fix it, right? And then the process basically is, if I have a radon or a termite and he sees potential termites or does see termites, like, I see termites, you might want to get a termite guy out here and get it treated, right? Or consult and see whether they have something, an insurance policy for it. So that's the expectation of what he does.
And it is a snapshot in time. It's that day, that hour. It could be broken next hour.
It could be.
And they're human. They miss stuff too.
They can miss some. So I pay all this money. About how much do people typically spend? If I did all the inspections, I cambered the sewer lateral lines. They literally put a camera down there. They run it all the way out to the main to see, are there leaks? Are there breaks? Is it clogged? Does it need to be cabled? Whatever, right? I have a radon. I have the termite, all this stuff. So what happens if he misses something when I paid? So first of all, how much do I pay? If I do all these things.
So again, each inspector, like company and stuff, they have their own prices. Now, they are competitive. I typically tell buyers that and again, size of home matters too. Is it a $2 million home? It goes by price point.
It does go by price point.
But I would say your standard, if we were just going to say a $350,000 home, if you get the standard set of items, you're probably in that $1,700 range.
Ooh, we're getting up there, aren't we?
Now, again, that's probably 900-ish is the building inspection, 7 to 9. And then
your typical termite.
On average, 150 to 175 for each service. Like, obviously, termite's a little less than a sewer scope, but if you average it out, every additional item you have would be about $175, and you can choose.
Right.
By far, that same $350,000 house with a pool on a septic system, we're $2,000 plus because you got those bigger inspection items to come up.
We got the well, we got the septic. Right.
So, I mean, you could honestly spend $3,000 on inspections if you had the right scenario and you were just like, tell me everything.
Right. But our average is somewhere around that $1,500 to $1,700, I would say, that most people spend on inspections. So that's good to know. So let's just say I have an inspection and I have these 10 days and he says, hey, this roof looks like you need to have a roofer out or whatever. Do I have to have the roofer out in those 10 days? Like, what happens? Or the furnace look like it has a cracked heat exchanger? Do I need to get a furnace guy out there in my 10 days? Like, how does this work?
So that's a great question too. So depending on, there's two routes that you go, right? Hey, I'm not asking the sellers to do anything. So basically all the inspections are for our knowledge only.
Right.
Then yes, if you want more information on those items, then we've got to have them out. Now, if we have our inspection privileges where we can ask the sellers to make repairs or get credits, a lot of times what I'll do is we will throw that on the sellers and say, hey, you go fix this. And then the sellers have to go have their roofer,
their furnace
guy out to tell us, because now it's the sellers to tell us that, hey, it's okay. Here's the report. Here's the actual contractor that says it's good or it's fixed.
Right.
So it depends on where the.
So we have options at that point. So I say to the seller, hey, fix these things or maybe give me a credit.
Yes.
So can I get just any amount of credit I want?
Yeah. So
like, am I limited to how much credit I can get from a seller? Because what if I've got a furnace and an AC that needs to be replaced, and that's anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 these days? Can I just get that as a credit and pick who I want?
If you're getting a loan, then there are definitely limits per your, like, what loan option you go with. If you're paying cash, no.
You can do whatever you want if
you're
paying cash.
Do whatever you want.
But when the lender's involved, you do have to check with them, because basically that lender's going to say, hey, you can only get credits for the exact amount of your closing cost.
Yeah.
And your closing cost being typically your insurance, your title insurance, right? The lender fees, underwriting, appraisal, all those things. Your inspections are included in there. Your escrow setup, 2 months of taxes and insurance if you're going to pay them through the lender. But the actual, and if that's only $7,000 or $8,000 in closing costs, then you're limited. You cannot get any more credit. So let's just say I've got this big problem. What do I do?
On top of that, it's a percentage. So even if you have, again, the scenario, which isn't that common, but let's just say you could only get $10,000 in credits, and even if your closing costs were $11,000, you're stuck at 10. Like, you can't go to the 11. So
yeah, that's true.
There
are requirements. So can I reduce the sale price then if I can't take enough credits? Can I do that?
If the appraisal is not done, because you have the appraisal involved in this too.
Right. So, but if I get an appraisal, I'm reducing the price. Shouldn't be too much of a problem.
Correct.
Right? So, but the thing about reducing the prices doesn't put money in your pocket to pay for that repair. So you're like, oh yeah, instead of getting the house for $350, I got it for $340, but I didn't actually. Is there $10,000 actually coming from anywhere? No. Right. You still have to pull that $10,000 out of your pocket to go put that new furnace and AC in, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's just say I do get a credit from the seller for $10,000 for a new furnace and AC. How does that work?
Yeah. So this is the biggest.
They're going to write me a check?
Yeah, this is the biggest misconception on how the credit works. And I've had to, over the years, get really specific and making sure my buyers know where it's coming from, because we'll get to closing day and they're like, well, how do I get my credit for my HVAC, which is $4,000?
Right.
The way it works is, if at closing you needed $15,000 to buy the home, and we got a $5,000 credit for a furnace, at closing, now you only need $10,000. So the $5,000 credit is sitting in your bank account. Spend it however you want.
It's money I did not have to bring to closing that I would have had to bring otherwise.
Yep. And again, it's really important to understand, like, hey, you were going to need 15. Now you only need 10.
So it's a reduction in what I needed.
Because what, again, I've had happen before is buyers think, oh, I need 10. I have an extra 5 and I'm getting a $5,000 credit. They feel like the world is theirs. But that's not how it works. But yeah, and again, there are certain items that are a lot easier to get sellers to fix and credit for than others. I mean, we've seen that over the years.
We're going to talk about those next week. Like some of the more common building inspection items that come up, maybe what they cost, what's more common, what's not. But this, you do have rights to an inspection. You can get credits. You can get price reductions. You have to talk to your lender about it before you make agreements, right? And this is all negotiable. But once I do make this request, how many days do we have to negotiate it here?
Yeah, so again, unless stated different in the contract, 10 days once I submit that request to work it out.
Another 10 days. So this could be as much as a 15 to 20 day process, where in a lot of other states, Like you get like 14 days to inspect, and when you make
Yeah.
a request, seller's going to answer in 3 days. That is really more common across the country, and it's very different here in St. Louis, even just from Springfield, Missouri, like I said,
Yeah.
and even from other states. So wherever you're coming from, please, when you're in St. Louis, this looks very different on the inspection process, but there is a process for it. So next week we're going to talk about more of the common items on building inspections that are found, and maybe the easier ones to get sellers to fix, maybe the harder ones, and kind of how this works. Okay, so thanks for joining us. Give us a like, give us a share. We'll talk more about inspections next week. Thanks for joining us. Until then, have a great week.